Hey everybody, my name is Justin and welcome back to our BTR Garage. Today we're going to be installing the first upgrade of this 2018 racing off-season on my 2017 BRZ. What we're going to be installing is a basic oil cooler kit to help keep our oil temperatures low both during daily driving and more importantly when out on the racetrack. We're going to go ahead and show you what we've got and then get it installed onto the car. So this particular oil cooler that I picked up came from a place called Never Ending Details, and basically what they do is take OEM Subaru parts from turbocharged Subarus like a WRX that have these oil coolers installed, and they put it together in a little package where it's easy to pick up. You don't have to worry about sourcing all of the correct parts. You just buy this little kit and it's ready to go. What you get in your kit is the oil cooler itself. Again, this is the OEM Subaru unit. This will fit over where your existing oil filter lives. We'll show you how that goes on in a minute. And again, this is a very basic oil cooler. It will cool your oil a good bit, but there are better and higher performing applications for dedicated track cars or cars that are doing regular track days. You also get the extended filter stem. This allows you to actually fit the oil cooler onto the car, and then a couple of hoses which will attach to our coolant system, and that's what's used to actually flow coolant through the cooler, and that cools the oil off. And before we can get underway with the install process, we have to remove a couple things on the car, one being our parent inlet tube or your stock intake inlet tube if you have one, and the oil filter of course has to come off as well. We're going to get that stuff taken off and then start moving forward. We'll take a look at things now with the oil filter removed and the intake tube removed. So here's our oil filter location. This is the stem right here that we're going to replace with that longer stem that came with the kit. We'll need a 24mm deep socket or 15/16 size deep sockets equivalent to get that out. And then moving over to the area underneath the throttle body, you'll notice there is this little hose down here. This is the one where coolant transfers through. We're actually going to remove that and replace those with the hoses that came with the kit. Those will route actually over to the oil cooler itself. So we've grabbed our socket and our wrench. We'll go ahead and remove the stock stem. So that thing is actually on there really tight and I don't feel like busting my knuckles across some of the other components, so I'm going to get the breaker bar out and see if that helps. There we go. So that wasn't too bad with the breaker bar. Here's a close-up look of what our two stems look like. Obviously this is the OEM one and this is the one that's longer that will accommodate the oil cooler. So we're going to put that one in once we lay the oil cooler down on top of the oil filter mount there. Next thing we're going to do is grab our oil cooler itself and grab the shorter of the two hoses. You can see I placed the hose clamp over the attachment point there, and then we're just going to install this one hose for now. Hose clamp is fastened down onto the fitting. Now what we need to do is drop the oil cooler down onto the oil filter spot, and I've already cleaned and re-lubricated the seat there. One thing we do have to do is take this long hose and fish it underneath the AC compressor here. That's kind of one of the two tricky parts here of getting this installation done. As you can see, we've got it fished through underneath. We can just set the cooler onto its location there, and then we're going to take the other long tube and we're going to try to fish it back through the front and then bring it around to the oil cooler nozzle on the other side here, or the oil cooler fitting rather. And this is the second tricky part of this installation. All right. Finally, I think I got that hose through there. I'm not gonna lie, that was incredibly frustrating and a pain in the ass to get that routed under there, but both hoses are routed underneath the compressor here. Now I need to get this cooler back into place. Now with the hoses pulled through, we're going to attempt to reattach or attach the other side of this hose to this other fitting down here. So that went on pretty easy. Make sure your hose clamp is on there as well beforehand. At this point we can go ahead and grab the new stem that we got with the kit, and then we'll drop this down through the oil cooler and thread it into place, making sure our hose fittings are aligned properly so they're not interfering with anything else in the car. Go ahead and snug it down. So we'll take a look at the way things are set up as of right now. As you can see, the oil cooler is secured in place. The hose on the outside, or the straight fitting, comes out and around and kind of underneath the oil filter mount down here, and then routes back underneath the compressor down in there. And you can also see the other fitting as well. On the other side, they come out down underneath there. Now we can go ahead and hook those up to their destinations, which are going to be where this U hose is down here. We're going to have to take that off and then put these hoses into place. So we'll remove the hose clamps on this tube down here. And these are coolant hoses, so I did stick a rag down there just in case some coolant leaks out. All right, with the clamps removed, we can go ahead and slide the hoses off, and it's pretty easy. Tiny drop of coolant, looks like. So the bottom one is continuing to gush fluid, of course. So we're gonna cut this hose to length, I think, and attach it down there. Get our hose clamp on there, and then try to get this thing into place quickly. First hose is attached, and it's just a matter of getting the hose clamp in the right position, and then we can tighten it down. So getting that hose clamp down there tightened as well also proved to be a total pain. I actually removed the other coolant line that's on the top, or the side rather, of the throttle body down here, and then I was able to get a tool in there and tighten it down. But now I got to clean up all of the coolant that leaks down on top of the engine block there, which shouldn't be a big deal. And then we'll attach the other hose here in just a second. Now we're ready to go ahead and put on the second hose, and this one is a lot more simple. Basically, we're just making sure that we're not kinking the hose anywhere so that the fluid can flow freely. And you guys probably can't see it too well, but just want to make sure the hoses are nice and rounded off down here and don't have a big nasty kink in them. So we have that on there, and we'll go ahead and tighten up that hose clamp. And let's take a close-up look now that we have the coolant hoses in place. You can see where they come out underneath the compressor down there. They're routed around with no kinks or sharp turns, and then they attach down underneath the throttle body there. Before we put everything back together, we're going to grab our torque wrench, set it to 40 foot-pounds of torque, and then torque down the nut here on the top of the oil cooler. Then we can go ahead and grab our oil filter, put it back into place. Grab our intake tube, and we're going to put this back into place. All right, everybody, the oil cooler installation is complete. It did turn out to be a little bit more difficult than I had anticipated, mostly routing those hoses underneath that compressor unit and getting them up into the proper place and then attaching them to the two connections on the throttle body was a little bit tricky as well. You want to make sure you get those hose clamps good and tight that connect to the throttle body fittings for the coolant lines. And then of course, when you're done with the installation process and you start the car back up, you want to run it for a short period, get back under there and check for any leaks where your hose is connected and around the oil filter and the oil cooler itself. Now there are two processes that I still have to take care of that I'm not going to show on camera to finish up this installation process. One is topping off the coolant in the car and then making sure we get the air out of the lines as well, because we did introduce some air into the system by adding the new lines and the new fittings and things into the coolant system. We'll also want to check the oil levels because we're also increasing the oil capacity just very slightly, so we'll do that as well per normal guidelines when you check your oil and top off your oil. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, please leave them down below. Like always, I love to hear from you. Next up is going to be the test of this particular oil cooler and how it performs on the track in regards to cooling our oil. I already did a baseline test out at the track a little while back where I recorded some oil temperatures with no oil cooler on the car in the form that it was prior to installing the oil cooler. So we're going to get back out to the track, do some additional testing, and then compare and contrast the temperatures of the oil without the oil cooler and then the temperatures with the oil cooler. So stick around for that. It should be coming up here pretty soon. Stay fast out there, everybody. I am checking out. We'll talk to you all next time.